Good afternoon, dear ladies, gentlemen, friends, colleagues. I'm glad to welcome everyone at the 12th Annual Gaida Forum. Today, during our session, we're going to discuss issues related to the development of the Eurasian Economic Union. Even though we've already been introduced in the video, as is tradition, I'm going to introduce everyone. Personally, I'm going to moderate our today's discussion. My name is Sergey. Sinelnikov, I'm Rector of the Russian External Trade Academy. Joining us today in the studio are Mr. Overchuk, Deputy Chair of the Government of the Russian Federation, and Mikhail Myasnikovich, who chairs the board of the Eurasian Economic Commission. And together, we are going to discuss the following issues today. First, what are the outcomes of the development of the Eurasian Economic Union so far? Secondly, what's its place in the world economic system? And the third issue, how precisely the union is being managed and if anything needs to be changed. Now, as far as the first question is concerned, I think everyone is aware that 10 years ago a customs union was set up comprising Belarus, Kazakhstan and Russia. In 2015, it transformed into the Eurasian Economic Union and it was joined by Kyrgyzstan and Armenia. Absolutely correct, yes. So, for 5 years, the Union has been there. This single economic union, it sought to achieve 4 freedoms. First, the freedom of movement of goods. According to experts, even though these vary, the movement of goods has been liberalized to the level of around 60 to 70%. And the outcome of this liberalization is uncertain. At the very beginning, around 90 to 95% of all goods were supposed to be liberalized in terms of movement. But afterwards, exemptions were introduced after Kazakhstan joined the Union. That was due to Kazakhstan's responsibilities and obligations inside the WTO. Apart from exemptions, we also have different national practices in classifying goods. So, in practice, different goods could be treated differently according to different classifications, and the tariffs can vary accordingly. And there are other practices. And such issues as precious metals and gems and alcohol and hazardous waste. All of these issues have not yet been entirely resolved, and this is something we're going to address in future. Another freedom is freedom of services. It's 53 sectors so far. Most of them are business services, construction, travel services, and the Union also plans to cover another 5% by 2025 and put it on a single market. According to experts, we have achieved this level of freedom by around 45 to 50%. Another freedom is freedom of capital movement. According to experts, we have accomplished only 20% of the goal. And if we look at the concept of one single financial market endorsed in autumn 2019, only by 2025, the countries will have come up with common approaches to building a unified financial market. So the processes are moving slowly. The last freedom is freedom of labor movement. Experts believe that around 70% of the goal has already been secured because no work permit is required any longer. A single taxation system has been introduced, and Other things have been accomplished too, such as the recognition of documents, education and medical documents. I would very much like our speakers to dwell on these issues. The second question is related to the Union's relations to third countries. The share of the Union in the world GDP is 3.7%, and it's been decreasing. It used to be 4.2% in 2013, so the Union is advancing a little slower than the rest of the world. There is a separate question why this is happening. This is not the subject of our discussion today, but I cited this statistics because mutual trade within the Union is several times less impressive than the trade of separate members of the Union with third countries, and the same goes for investment. Investment from third countries into the economies of the Union members is far superior to mutual investment that is flowing from one country of the Union to others. And we believe that the combination of policies, the alignment of policies inside the Union is also very important, but so far we see different approaches to the WTO among the members and to FTAs set up by separate members. To cite a famous example is the Russian embargo, the counter-sanctions, and some restrictions on Ukrainian goods that have been adopted by Russia but have not been adopted by some members of the Union. So this is yet another subject we could cover today. And the third block is managing the Union, and a lot of issues have cropped up here. Experts have different proposals as to how exactly the management, the regulation, have to be amended. There is a proposal to provide the Eurasian Economic Commission with additional powers, such as supervising the compliance and the right to resort to courts if such violations do happen, the veto right, maybe the principle of equitable representation has to be revisited. There are different proposals. And of course, an important matter is the common budget of the Union, because there are those who stand to benefit from decisions, others can be the losers, and if the veto right is there, it could prevent the Union from moving in certain directions. And if someone stands to lose and someone stands to benefit, then the losing side has to be compensated, and the mechanisms for that already exist, for example, in the European Union. The exemptions from the single tariff, that is another matter that needs discussing. So I would like to ask our participants to touch upon these issues and to concentrate on them. But of course our discussion can go beyond what I've just mentioned. Mikhail, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for providing me with this opportunity to participate in this wonderful forum. I find it an emblematic event. It's the first time I take part in the Gaida Forum, even though it is well-renowned and it goes far beyond the borders of participating countries. Thank you very much for introducing our discussion, for providing us with a bunch of questions to which I will provide answers. At least I'll try to, and I'll share my views. Yes, as of this day, we have to admit that the aggregate GDP of the Eurasian Economic Union, as a relatively small share in the world GDP, 3.7% on average, but the potential that is hiding and the agreement on the Union allows us to raise this share significantly. We have had a look at this potential and we're doing everything in our power to develop our integration along the lines set in the strategy until 2025. Then we will be able to raise import substitution by 10 to 12% and raise the exports, non-commodity exports into third countries from our countries by 20-25%. So the potential is there. We see the problems that exist. We're trying to address them. And I would like to highlight that removing the bottlenecks is something we factor into the strategic avenues for the development of the Union until 2025. The strategy has been adopted and endorsed by the heads of state on December the 11th, 2020 at the summit. Right now the Commission is working to translate these goals into reality, into concrete steps. If we have a look at different areas of our cooperation, then we will see that there are many issues that can be addressed at the national level, primarily in terms of technical regulation. Sometimes we do not have a sufficiently high level of internal trade. It stands at 60 to 70 billion US dollars annually, I mean the mutual trade, whereas our trade with third countries is far greater, far superior to that. Why is that? First, a couple of words about the technical regulation. As of now, thanks to the technical regulations that we are implementing within the Union, 85% of our goods have already been certified under unified technical norms. And this does not simply create trust. It means that the goods that are circulating in our internal markets and those that are exported are truly competitive globally, and this is a very good groundwork for us to make headway. Another thing we have not implemented so far is the harmonization of national legal system legislations. The national legislation of the Eaeu member countries has to be harmonized on a mutual basis. And we also need harmonization between national legislations and the norms of the Union as a whole. Sometimes we see cases when national governments make decisions to protect their internal markets, to support internal domestic industries, which creates certain impediments to mutual trade. Sometimes these decisions are taken under some patriotic pretenses to protect the sovereignty, but we have to understand that the main power of our Union consists in our synergies and national complementarity of our national economies. And that is why it is very important to harmonize national legislations and the norms of the Union. If this is done, then it's going to give us a great advantage. We also have to understand that we're lacking in goods that are highly competitive and that could be sold not just in our domestic market, but also in third countries. So the goal ahead of us is to set up joint ventures like public companies with shareholders that could be competitive and that could produce goods both to be consumed domestically and to be exported from the Union into the outside world. And this is an issue that is constantly in the spotlight of our leadership. And during the last session of the Eurasian Economic Union Council, President Vladimir Putin of Russia suggested that joint programs of import substitutions should be launched, and he invited other members to participate in joint projects in such high technology industries as aircraft construction. So the political will is there. So at the level of the Commission, at the level of national governments, we have to give some thought to joining our efforts together so that we are nationally complementary and so that we can produce competitive goods. So far, the goods are not sufficient in numbers and not of sufficient quality so far. We have to admit that in some cases. So we've got to make sure our goods are of the same or better quality than German goods or Chinese goods that are worthy of investment. Of course, to achieve that, we need expertise, we need analysis, so that we do not simply waste money. We have to understand where and when to set up a company and what area of the market these companies have to be covered. If the goods are not going to be competitive, then there is no point in trying to funnel money into that, because we will be simply wasting money. There are many good avenues and directions to pursue, and the Council of our Commission, which is comprised of Deputy Prime Ministers, and Alexey Overchuk represents Russia in the Council, and the Council is often the platform for heated discussions that allow us to sort of crystallize the golden mean, the principles that will allow us to achieve synergy and to achieve and secure the place our union deserves in the world economy as an economic hub and center. And we will be very happy if the participants of the forum will give their proposals to us as to concretely what ideas, what initiatives could make it into this strategy. I think in the course of our discussion we'll touch upon other issues too, but that's it from me for now. Thank you. Mr. Overchuk, please.
A very good day, dear colleagues. Thank you so much, Mr. Sinelnikov-Murylev, for inviting me to attend this discussion. As always, you are being provocative in introducing the panelists, the speakers, which is good on the one hand, but you have been quite successful in providing the snapshot overview. I mean the current status of the Eurasian Economic Union, and you have been able to analyze the degree of integration of our 5 nations with respect to the 4 freedoms proclaimed during the establishment of the Union, and you scolded us for being too slow, and you have urged us to speed up to overtake the European Union that is often viewed as the role model by other alliances worldwide. Actually, the figures you have provided testifying to the fact that a lot has been achieved and accomplished as regards bringing our nations and economies and markets together. As we are now having good numbers, and we have the track record of 10 years if we reckon the customs union, but the Eurasian Economic Union is only 5 years old, and the 5-year-old child is only starts looking around. And this is what we have been doing. We have been looking around and at each other, trying to see what benefits each of the nations can derive from the membership in the Eurasian Economic Union, because all these debates in all the 5 nations are still underway, and the decisions by the Council that are endorsed by the Commission are a follow-up on the debates inside those countries. And all the nations must be aware of the fact that everybody has their own expectations, like benefits deriving from access to the transport infrastructure or larger capacity markets, or integration of capital markets, or expectations that there will be an inflow of investments, or better conditions for the labor migrants at the destination country. This was what prompted countries to accede to the Union, which is normal. Today we are talking about the fact that the year 2020 there was a hard one, doubtless. We can have the retrospective analysis of that period by period, and it had an impact on all the countries. A year ago, the government in the Russian Federation was ousted. Later, in late January, the reshuffle happened in the Eurasian Economic Commission, which had been expected, but anyway, some additional tweaking was needed, and pandemic arrived in March, and August the presidential election in Belarus followed. In September, we saw the flare-up of the Nagorno-Karabakh armed conflict. In October, the elections in Kyrgyzstan followed. It was a pre-election year for Kazakhstan, and all those factors put together painted a backdrop that impacted all of us. But anyway, the outcome was quite decent, because as a result of our discussions and talks, we have accomplished the Union development strategy till 2025. And this paper, this blueprint, allows all of us to calmly and orderly, in an orderly manner, all the avenues and opportunities that lie ahead, and that will allow the Union to make headway in terms of integration. Definitely, what we want is to provide a favorable context for the single goods and services market. We also want a uniform set of rules and regulations for the whole of the Union in non-tariff, technical and customs administration and regulation, certification and accreditation. We want traceability of goods and services and items. We want the integration of information systems of the nations in customs administration, in sanitary and phytosanitary control, in tax administration also, when are launching this discussion on that matter. We want to strike out all the exemptions from and introduce the single customs tariff for the Eaeu. This is what we seek to do. But while discussing all these matters, I mean the uniform investment space and all other matters, we must assume what is the degree of readiness of our partners, I mean the member states of the Eaeu. And the integration is possible to the extent that is acceptable to our partners. Naturally, some of us want to see the common markets right now. But quite often, these common markets require higher degree of integration. In terms of economy,
Михаил Владимирович совершенно справедливо
and
говорит о том, что
Mikhail
необходимо странам
said quite justly,
решиться
Mr. Myasnikovich has said justly that
часть своего суверенитета
definitely countries
и смелее идти на
would have the
создание
cheek to relegate part of their sovereignty to the supranational level of the Commission and proceed with the supranational bodies. But different nations see that differently. They may have their own perspective with respect to their place in the Union and the degree of integration, and we must treat that with respect and see what is possible right now. I hope that confidence will be on the rise as we move on, and that will entail higher degrees of integration, and we will see full-fledged supranational bodies and institutional capacity building. And we'll see overhaul in the Eurasian Commission. And we have been mooting all that while preparing the strategy blueprint. And the mandatory nature of the rulings and verdicts of the Eurasian Court is also a prerequisite, but all that requires consensus, and the consensus matters are important for the Union, because on the one hand, we can see that the consensus decisions take longer, and quite often the efficiency goes down. But at the same time, we take into account opinions of different countries, irrespective of the size of the economy, that also has some upside for the member states. And we noticed that more and more heed is paid to our union worldwide. It's in the spotlight. And we're seeing that there are some positive trends with respect to the expansion of the Union. Uzbekistan has received an observer status at the Union, as well as the Republic of Cuba. Irrespective of all the constraints related to the pandemic, dialogue is ongoing with the European Commission, as well as with the People's Republic of China, as part of coupling the Eurasian Economic Union and the Belt and Road Initiative of China. All of that are important developments. They will never be speedy ones. You should not expect that, no. It cannot happen overnight. But still, the headway is there, and eventually all of that will have the positive outcome. Another point to mention that is often neglected, unfortunately, but that is of paramount importance. It is about the human dimension of the Eurasian Economic Union. Sergey has said that we have performed best in integration in terms of labor market progress. This is where we see the most tangible positive impact for people, the freedom of movement and more job opportunities, the 13% rate on Russian soil since the first day of your stay, and relevant similar conditions for Russian nationals in Belarus, Kyrgyzstan and other member states, which is important. What we should focus on, Mr. Myasnikovich, is how we must bring benefits for people, for rank-and-file people, because our nationals should feel the advantages of their country being a part of the Union. And we're seeing achievements there also. I must mention the digitalization programs. They are ongoing, and we have been advancing them inside the Union. The Digital Initiatives Foundation has been set up by the Eurasian Development Bank, seeking to deliver specific projects that will benefit the people. And the people will know that this is a Eaeu-driven process. And this trade name, the Eaeu, will become part and parcel of people's everyday lives. And as soon as we win the minds and the hearts of people, we'll get their support. Will be garnered. Well, you have accused me of being a provocateur. Let me continue, unless you mind it, in similar vein. I have a question to you and to Mikhail Myasnikovich. Fancy, it's the 17th forum in 5 years, when the strategy that you have mentioned expires. So if we take stock in 5 years, time just fancy for a minute, what you would like to see implemented and delivered. Mikhail, probably you will be the first. Well, first of all, I'd like to follow up on the ideas voiced by Mr. Overchuk. As regards the governance, we must be aware that it is a union of independent sovereign nations, not a union state, no. And the work is done and performed to have the understanding that we facilitate accomplishing common goals in the interests of the national government, and that should not run counter to national projects. So it is inter-complementarity, actually. And this is what the political leaders of our nations instruct us to do. They have provided the main takeaways, and let's try to wait to look at what happens in 5 years' time.
Внешний
Well,
контур у
see,
нас выстроен благодаря
the
таможенному кодексу.
external perimeter is fixed thanks to the
если,
customs code.
Безусловно, будет соблюдаться
In the
единый
event
таможенный тариф,
that
если у нас будет
we stick
работать
to the
как
uniform
часы, как
customs
говорится,
tariff,
система прослеживаемости,
if the
то у нас не
traceability
должно быть больших
system
проблем. Но,
works well,
к
in a
сожалению, мы
sound manner,
видим, что у нас очень много
we will
еще
not have
препятствий.
major issues.
Препятствий в
But
виде
unfortunately
барьеров,
now we're having
препятствий в
lots
виде
of obstacles
изъятий,
like
препятствий в виде
barriers and
ограничений даже тех,
exemptions and
ну, будем говорить,
restrictions
норм, которые не
and some of
урегулированы
the provisions
законодательством, правом нашего Союза.
that are
И
yet
вот в этом
to
плане
be
представляется, что вот
settled
эти, если будут убраны
at the
барьеры,
intergovernmental legal
конкретно
level.
не только барьеры, в целом препятствия, то мы уже
In case
получим
we remove
больший
all
эффект
those
от того, что мы
obstacles
уже даже имеем.
and impairments,
Благодаря внешнему
we
контуру
will
и вот
have
устранению
effect
препятствий во
from what we
внутренней
already
торговле.
have now
Смотрите,
in terms of the intra-union trade.
вот в чем привлекательность, еще можно сказать, нашего Союза.
What is the upside
Я
of the
согласен с
union?
прозвучавшими оценками, что
I concur with the
2020
assessments
год
made
был
that
чрезвычайно
2020 was
очень
a
тяжелым годом,
hard
и
year,
возникали проблемы
and problems
такой
appeared
непредсказуемости, то есть это нигде нельзя было прочесть ни
related
в
to the
одном учебнике
uncertainty
и
and
найти ответы на
unpredictability.
те или иные вопросы.
You
Но
cannot
вот благодаря пониманию
find
вот эта вот
answers
беда во
to
многом
these
сближала, и мы
challenges in
принимали
any course
решения
book, no.
буквально, что называется,
But
с
that
колес
brought us
по
closer together, and we
тарифному и
decided on
нетарифному
the spot
регулированию,
on the
по
tariff and non-tariff
медицинским изделиям, по
regulation on
лекарствам,
medical
значит, по
items and
дефицитным
medical
товарам на
drugs,
внутреннем рынке и так далее. И это
on the
удавалось. И удавалось это во многом
on goods
благодаря
shortages.
цифровизации. Ведь вот
In no
если
small
бы
part,
не
that was
цифровые
because of the
платформы,
digitalization,
пусть
and
они,
thanks
может
to
быть,
it,
еще не до конца
had it not been for the
совершенны,
digital
но даже
platforms,
общение, выработка и принятие решений были
as
бы просто
imperfect
невозможны.
as they are
Это
still,
представилось возможным.
we
И вот
wouldn't
на
have
это
been
будет
able
направлена
to
дальнейшая
overcome all
работа.
those problems, and we
Привлекательность
should make
еще и в
them
огромном нашем рынке. Для того, чтобы рынок наш
even more
работал
sophisticated,
не только за счет
to see our market fully operational and efficient.
Мы должны все больше и больше
We should not rely on the administrative resource only. We should be able to produce more and more high-quality, competitive goods and items for the domestic market of ours.
высказал, значит,
And I'm
вот эту
supportive
идею, уважаемый Алексей Логвинович, что
of
мы должны работать на конкретного человека. Должна быть социальная лояльность к тем процессам,
of the
к тем
idea and point by
решениям,
Mr.
которые
Overchuk
принимаются
that we
на
should be
уровне
loyal to
Евразийского
rank-and-file
экономического
people.
союза и в развитии тех вот
And
посылов, которые идут для принятия
follow
на национальном уровне.
on
Когда
the
люди
national
почувствуют, особенно
strategies in our
молодежь, полезность,
member states.
когда увидят
And
себя
when
вот в этих
our
проектах, вот
citizens
это уже мы
and the
будем
young
говорить,
ones
что
in
точка
particular
невозврата, она
feel the
пройдена. И
benefit,
можно будет говорить о том, что наш союз
will
действительно
be
заработал
able to say that we have
достаточно устойчиво.
passed the
Даже
point of
если
no
посмотреть,
return,
то и сегодня особенно нечего
tipping
посыпать
point.
голову пеплом.
And we
Да, у нас
shouldn't be
ВВП просел на 3,4%.
putting ashes on our head. The
Европейского
GDP
Союза
drop was 3.4%, but in the European Union the drop was
радоваться, то
around
особенно нечего, что
7%.
3-4 тоже чувствительная
Well, 3.7,
цифра минус.
3.4 is
Но мы
also
говорим об
a
объективных
sensitive
обстоятельствах.
slump. Yes, indeed, it is
Еще
quite
один
tangible.
нюанс. Фактически
And
у нас
another point to
24
make,
годом заканчиваются все
in
ответные
2024,
нашими учредительными документами сроки на создание
the
общих рынков,
timeline expires as per our
общего рынка
constituting documents to establish the common markets of power,
нефтепродуктов,
gas,
то есть
oil
те,
and
которые
refined
статьи, которые
products.
формируют основу
These are the
структуры себестоимости
items
вот в этом плане. И,
that underlie the
безусловно,
cost
настойчивая
structure of our
позиция
markets.
Российской
And
Федерации,
definitely
здесь
the
надо
persistent
поддержать по
position of the
вопросам
Russian
налоговой
Federation,
администрации,
which I
по
praise
вопросам
in terms
особенно
of tax
то, что касается
administration,
косвенных налогов.
has been of help.
Здесь Россия ушла далеко вперед.
In particular with respect to indirect taxes, Russia is way ahead of other nations in this respect, and as I said your nation is like a spacecraft, and the national taxation systems of Kazakhstan, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia are relatively competitive, but we need to align them. We should find common grounds to be able to come to terms on the indirect taxes and interflows of capital, so we should be monitoring the goods and financial flows to improve and consolidate trust, both for the public authorities and rank-and-file people.
Thank you. The thing is, we are running out of time. We have just 5 minutes left. But you have just mentioned, Mikhail, that Cuba and Tajikistan have become observers by 2025. Are they going to become members of the Union? Well, it is there you have to ask, Uzbekistan and Cuba. But to start with, Uzbekistan is a country very close to us culturally and historically. So regardless of how the potential membership is going to play out, we do hope Uzbekistan is going to become a member of the Union someday, and all countries are going to support it. Russia is going to help, and others are going to do their part. And regardless of when and if that happens, our economic systems are going to become closer. We're always going to be the biggest market for goods from Uzbekistan, and as of now, we see a significant increase in trade with Uzbekistan, even despite the pandemic, and we have also created the most favorable conditions for promoting goods from Uzbekistan in the Russian market. And we're closely working with Uzbekistan to bring closer our taxation systems. This is something we started back 2 years ago, and we're going to continue with following this path, and we're certainly going to assist Uzbekistan in everything related to aligning our customs systems, sanitary, epidemiological, control systems, and to make sure that goods from Uzbekistan are in compliance with our standards, and this will give them access to our market. And I am hopeful that through this process of bringing our economies together, we are going to sooner or later arrive at membership. As far as Uzbekistan is concerned, they are very actively engaged. I've already held meetings at the level of ambassador and deputy prime minister, and they have taken a keen interest in this project. And by the end of this year, we're going to submit a draft MOU, and we'll start building a roadmap. If you'll allow me, I'll ask another question. During the first 10 years of this millennium, we talked about a single space from Vladivostok to Lisbon. What about Greater Eurasian Partnership? Is it kind of like this idea? Because it brings together spaces from the east and from the west, and the One Belt, One Road initiative also fits in. So what do you think the changes are going to be in 5 years in that regard? We are moving in this direction. Indeed, the Eurasian Partnership and the One Belt, One Road initiative are emblematic documents, key documents. And in that regard, I believe we could first accomplish 2 global projects. The first project is the transportation project, and Russia is to play a significant role in this process. We need kind of a single coordinating body to manage this process, and it'll improve this transportation corridor from China to Europe, and maybe north-south corridor. And another project is Kazakhstan's initiative with regard to logistics centers. centers that could be used not just for domestically produced goods, but also for imported goods, primarily imports from China and from Europe. And what we're planning to do is to concentrate our attention on these two projects. As far as the first project is concerned, we're working together with the Russian Academy of Sciences that was charged by the President to look into this project. And we believe that these two areas could indeed be brought together based on the road initiative in the next 5 years. We're running out of time. So, Mr. Overchuk, the last question to you. What are the prospects? Well, look at the geographical map, where Russia is, China is, and the rest of the countries are, and everything is going to become evident. What we need is a set of arrangements, of agreements that seek to promote goods without barriers, very smoothly. Well, that is just shortly what I think. Thank you very much, Mr. Overchuk, Mr. Myasnikovich. Thank you very much. So we've got a good discussion, and in 5 years we'll get back to this.